I think I know everybody. Well, maybe apart from Stuart. So
Hi, Bruce. Good to meet you.
yeah, yeah. Well, just a bit of introduction then. So I'm over at Manchester now. I used to be with Syngenta before that, and they set our team up originally, going back about 20 odd years ago, to look at agri-sensing in basically arable agriculture. Basically mostly field crops. Um, I mean, since then, that Syngenta relationship was about the first 5 years. We still work with them, but work with a lot of other companies now. So we've stuck mostly to arable, some livestock sort of sensing, but it's not really our area. It's more the spin out of what we've been doing from the arable, which might fit into livestock. So from that, I sit within the electronic engineering department. So a bit of an oddity for agriculture. And when we did the NA Agri Food program with people like Sheffield, I think JQ were involved in all that sort of stuff. It was quite interesting actually making all these sorts of links across the not just across the multiple universities with agriculture and food, but actually within Manchester because there's a lot of disparate groups. I sit in Elec Eng, but there's loads and loads of other little groups you sort of dug up the woodwork, which is part of the reason why we end up with this sort of project. So again, and I know that Jake knows this, but I mean, Stuart, you familiar with the BBSRC?
No, no, completely new.
Right. Okay. Well, what they did, it's basically one of seven research councils in the UK. So it's basically what funds the academic research across the UK. And then you've got the likes of Innovate UK, which is more the industry focused one, which you might have had some involvement with.
Yeah, I've seen some information from Jake actually.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're pretty good. In fact, most of my space is the Innovate sort of space, but this one actually came from the BBSRC. So as it sounds, it's the biological biosciences areas of research. Um, And so what they were after, it was protected and controlled environment. So there's a lot of people within the UKUAT network who've got other PACE projects. But what the call was, it was probably about 3 years ago now, was basically saying, can we come up with tech which will improve the environmental sustainability and the productivity of protection and controlled environment? So that's everything from polytunnels all the way through to fully controlled vertical farming type units. So we set a project up into that, and the BBSRC, they like all the research councils, they always they come from the techie angle, but they then say, well, there's no point in having it unless the people actually want the thing. So they always say, get the social scientists involved. So we sort of played them at their own game on this one. So we said, okay, let's make a project which is actually half half social science and half techie. So the social science bit of this, I mean, this is right. I'll just go through the sort of partnership we've got because it might give you again a bit of context. So UCAT are obviously in there for the networking aspects of it, as is a group called Phenome UK. Now, what that is it's a BBSRC funded research council area. But what they're doing is looking at crop phenotyping. It's a national infrastructure for crop phenotyping. What's the next generation crops we'll need, and so they are linked in again because no matter whatever we do in the protected and controlled environments, urban agri-tech sort of stuff, we're going to need the right sort of crops to do it. So influencing that sort of group is key to us as well. And as it is Phenome UK, it's led out from Nottingham University. Um, they they've put the bid in now, and it's about 80 million has got in. So we'll see in January whether that's actually going to go ahead or not. So it's over the next 5 years building up the infrastructure. So again, Sheffield's deeply involved with it, as is Nottingham, as is sort of all the great and the good of the research bases across the UK in terms of plant science. You got the likes of Rothamsted and John Innes in there as well. So the other partners we've got in this, we've got Farm Urban, who obviously are involved in the Urban Agri-Tech network through Paul there. So they're acting as our grower partner. Sister is what used to be the old UMIS campus, the old technical college campus at Manchester University. It's now been all ring fenced out, and it's becoming this innovation district right next to the main railway station. So that yeah, it's got a whole series of things. It's going to be mixed retail, sort of accommodation. It's hotel. It's also a load of incubator type businesses. So they are very keen to sort of build their sort of environmental and credentials, and also the linkages to the community. So they're a partner. They host part of what we're doing here. Manchester's obviously there. There's another. It's actually a community interest group, Cracking Good Food, and what they do. I'm sort of talking around the subject because we'll get on to the project in a second. What Cracking Good Food do is they for people who are working with community supermarkets and with food banks and like, obviously communities will get food, but how you cook it and make a nutritious meal out of it is the other part of the equation. So they do that end of it. So we're working on what sort of produce could be produced in an urban environment, and they're working on how you then process it. We got a plant agri-tech little business, Plantago, who's been very useful for linking in with the local growers. And we got FOTENIX, which is actually a spin up from Manchester, which is you might be interested, Stuart, because actually involved with it does sensing using controlled lighting. So
okay.
it's multispectral sensing, three-dimensional multispectral sensing of the features in the crop canopy. So that's the partnership of business, because we had to have half business, half research for the project. So let's go on to the right screen. So what we're actually doing is saying, okay, in urban production, or certainly the vertical farming sort of production, obviously we can produce any crop we want, any time of the year, whatever flavor traits for the most part, by setting the right nutrient recipes, the right light recipes, all the rest of it. Problem is that most of it is producing bagged salads for M&S and Waitrose. It's not necessarily making a big difference outside of those high value crops that are the obvious ones to hit, the leafy greens and the like. So what we said was, okay, well let's start talking to the community. This is all aspects of the communities, from your top end chefs in the middle of a city centre, all the way through to the most deprived socioeconomic groups, as to what would they actually want in terms of produce that they can't get at the moment, and and accessible sort of prices, and accessible to literally geographically accessible as well, being produced in the local area. In particular, things like culturally relevant foods, something that you might still be able to get in the UK, but it costs a fortune or it tastes rubbish. It's that sort of thing, So really trying to understand that and see how we can make a difference with this. So looking forward. So that's basically what I was saying. So basically, what we're looking at is going beyond sort of bag salad type stuff, and also the commercial production of medical cannabis. So the project that's gone in is, I say, half techie, half social science. Now on the techie end, we've got above and below ground sensing, or above and below growth media sort of sensing in the units, which they operate as you're saying there. We've got FOTENIX involved, who do very much subtle tonal differences. It's very high definition imaging that they get of the plants as they grow. So they've got sensing systems which are built into the lighting assemblies, or around the lighting assemblies, and the top of these. In this case, we're showing sort of living wall type units that Farm Urban do. And so we've built in the multispectral sort of systems into the surface here. And so these are early slides, but what you get is a sort of a growth profile of the crop, and all the sort of flavor traits and nutritional traits, that it's generating. So you won't say anthocyanin content, or trying to actually work out the sort of sugar content of the crop as it's growing. It's the sort of thing that they do. Now, where the university comes in from our end of things on the engineering aspect is we go below the ground as well. So built into the assemblies underneath, it's basically a grid of electrodes, and what they do is they inject small currents in at different points around the root structure as it grows. Now, what these have been sort of evolved from the process sector, you know, for looking at production units within food manufacturing or within chemical manufacturing, where we're looking at things like multi-phase flows and stuff like filter cakes formation inside pressure filters, all these sorts of things. This is where these sort of technology have been used in the past for non-invasive imaging within steel structures. So we've basically adapted that and put it underneath the crops. So you get very small injections of current. So they're not hazardous in any way. You know, they're way within the sort of medical levels that you can get away with injecting currents. But we put those currents in and we measure voltages in different points. And if you do that iteratively and change around which your drive electrodes, which are receiving electrodes, what you can do is build up an image of what's happening inside the structure in real time. Now, they don't give you the nice X-ray images that you get. You know, you've obviously got the people over at Nottingham produce these real beautiful images of root hairs and all sorts of stuff. You know, what we get is blobology. We basically get it's a very crude image that gets generated, but it's at very low cost because it's basically just injecting currents and measuring voltages, and then reconstruct the images around them. So you can do that with modest computational power and very simple circuits. And so you can do it on every plant in a network. So what you then get is a profile of how homogeneous the growth profiles are underneath the crop, whilst you're looking at the easy part in some ways, imaging above the crop. So you get a sort of whole plant model, and it's very good for doing things like picking up nutrient content and electrolyte movements and these sorts of things. So the rationale here is that by putting that sort of tech within the totally controlled environment production, we can then start better understanding the growth recipes for the new crops that we're looking at. So that's where the techie bit comes in. We're building up the sensing and the agronomy for the crops that we don't grow at the moment in these sorts of environments, and also be able to, I suppose, screen the sort of cultivars as types of genetics that would work best in that environment, because they're probably not the same genetics that you would use in a field crop, which is designed obviously to also tolerate pathogens and all sorts of bits and pieces. You know, we don't have those issues within a controlled environment, and obviously we can change the lighting regimes in ways that you can't necessarily do in a field crop. So that's the techie bit. Where the community engagement bit goes, okay, the whole thing's built up as a whole load of, actually no, I will go back to that. So the whole thing at the moment, it started back in the start of last year. So we're now about halfway through. It's a 3-year project. And so we've got a series of units which have been going out across the city centre. So this is basically our work package 1, our community engagement sort of part. Work package 2 brings in how we do the sensing. So we've already got the above crop sensing embedded into a number of these units. What we're now building in is the below crop sensing. That's where we're concentrating at the moment to get the whole crop model. We've got a work package that then says, okay, you put the two together and actually start looking at when you do the community engagement, actually understand what crops you're wanting to grow. Let's actually start growing them. So that's what that 3rd work package is. And then we go back out to the community and say, right, we've grown these things. They seem to be what you want. Do they actually taste anything like you need? And, you know, have they any use to you whatsoever? You know, so it's basically trying to close that loop. And what we're trying to do is actually make this, even though it's a 3-year project, the areas we're dealing with, we're trying to make these sustainable such that, you know, they get their own legs. You know, they actually have they remain beyond the project and they get used for continuing the community engagement sort of part. Work package 5 is basically this, you know, so our outreach activity and working with people like the national infrastructure and the phenotyping sort of stuff. So that's how we structure the thing. But where we are now, just as a brief update. So we've got 5 units now going out there. we were originally going to build some massive, great vertical farm in the Reynolds building, which is this old UMIS campus area, right near the Piccadilly rail station. And then you work out, even though we were given free space, the cost of actually changing any of the building to accept a vertical farm was about £500,000 before we even started. So we thought again on that one. So we have a small demonstrator unit which is in one of the central buildings in the innovation district area. So if you come up from Piccadilly Station and turn left, about 5 minutes walk away, you'll see these units. You're quite welcome to come and visit. They're sitting in the atrium, and they get, because it's that Reynolds building that we put them in is also an incubator. We get a lot of footfall in there, so it's quite nice. They've got a restaurant in there as well, so it's sort of linking in with the produce that's coming out the units. We're actually starting to do cooking and actually using it in the produce within the restaurant, and also sending some of the produce to some local shops as Billy's Bagels. We get our produce goes into them. Again, it's a nice little community engagement. You talk to people in the shop about, what is this really what you want and that sort of stuff. So we've got another one that's going into Man City. Still not decided whether it's going to be front of house or it's going to be in the sort of VIP lounge yet. But they've taken it on board. So again, on the one hand, you got the Reynolds building, which is looking very much, I suppose, at the entrepreneurial community, sort of footfall, city centre sort of people walking around sort of thing. You got Man City, which is whatever Man City supporters are, all spread of them. I'm not making any comment about Man City supporters. We've then got the Lowry Theatre. So as you go in there, they've got a restaurant to the left, and so the manager of the restaurant there, they've got a whole series of chefs, but the Alex North that runs it, he's taken this on board, and so it's becoming part of the ingredients are getting used within the recipes for the meals, so they'll keep changing their menus based on what we're actually producing. So we're just early doors on that. We're only just installing that one, but again, it's almost like immediate feedback. Again, a theatre audience, you're probably talking sort of middle class type audience, probably, whatever. So we've then got a couple which are more out in the community. One in the Gorton Centre, which is very much they've got a small urban growing area anyway, a field at the back which people have raised beds and all sorts of stuff to grow things in. And so they have cooking courses. They've got a local grocers. It's basically, they have a community grocers in there. So very much working across that socioeconomic group as well. And similarly with our Plattfield site, that's so Gorton Centre's in East Manchester. We've got Plattfields in South Manchester. Again, they've got a allotment and all that sort of stuff. And they do all sorts of events in there, which so this is becoming part of their sort of whole urban growing environment. So that's where we are now. We've got about another 18 months to run on this. Actually, so things are now getting engaged into these communities, and now we're trying to get the feedback from them. So what I suppose where we're going forward with this is saying, if we're doing all this, then this is just within one city, one environment. If this is actually starting to work and it's actually starting to show this a range of produce that we really want to be going for in the future with urban agri-tech, it's a research funded project. We can quite happily share the sort of things that the community start to say, and hopefully start to spread these sort of ideas out across the community. And so, try growing this, try growing that. This is how you can grow it. Don't grow that because it'll never work, and all that sort of thing. So, it'd be nice to keep feeding back as we start getting some results from the communities as to where this might be going, and hopefully spread it out from beyond just one city centre. So I suppose that's where I'm going. I put my name down there, but Paul's obviously or heavily involved in the urban agri-tech community as well, so quite happily chat to him if you need some more information as well. That's
very good. Yeah, very good, very good.